She walked into what she believed was an elaborate rehearsal, playing the perfect bride-to-be for cameras and champagne. But when the mysterious black woman in the corner, the one everyone whispered about, leaned in close and said, "Nothing will be canceled," everything changed. This wasn't practice. This was real, and she'd already said, "I do." Before we dive into this unbelievable story of deception, power, and ultimate justice, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. You won't want to miss what happens when assumptions meet reality. Drop a like if you believe karma always finds its way, and comment below. Would you ever pretend to be someone you're not for money? Now let's begin this journey that will leave you questioning everything you think you know about power and justice. Maya Chen sat in her cramped studio apartment, staring at the eviction notice taped to her door. For 5 years, she'd chased the dream of becoming a serious actress in New York City. For 5 years, she'd waited tables, attended auditions, and lived on hope and instant ramen. At 28, hope was running dangerously thin, and the ramen wasn't paying the bills. Her phone buzzed with a call from her agent, Linda. The woman rarely called anymore, having mostly given up on booking Maya anything beyond commercial extra work. Maya answered with little enthusiasm, expecting another cattle call audition for a toothpaste ad. What she heard instead made her sit up straight. "I have something unusual," Linda said, her voice carrying an odd mixture of excitement and hesitation. "A wealthy family needs an actress for a private event. They're calling it an immersive experience or something. You'd play the role of a bride for a weekend wedding celebration. Everything would be filmed for a family video project. The pay is $50,000. Maya's breath caught. $50,000. That was more than she'd made in the past 2 years combined. It was her rent for a year. It was freedom from the constant anxiety that had become her only reliable companion. It was a chance to actually pursue her craft without wondering if she'd have electricity next month. "What's the catch?" Maya asked. Because in New York, nothing came without a catch. "No catch," Linda replied. "Just a rich family with more money than sense, wanting to create some kind of elaborate home movie. You show up, play the blushing bride, smile for cameras, and walk away with a check. Think of it as the easiest $50,000 you'll ever make." Maya said yes before her rational mind could list all the reasons she shouldn't. Desperation has a way of silencing caution. 3 days later, Maya stood at the gates of a massive estate in the Hamptons, her overnight bag feeling inadequate against the backdrop of old money and older traditions. The Morrison family mansion rose before her like something from a different century, all white columns and manicured gardens that whispered of wealth so established it no longer needed to announce itself. A stern-faced woman in her 60s greeted Maya at the door. Patricia Morrison had the kind of beauty that had been maintained through expensive procedures and iron discipline. Her eyes swept over Maya with the warmth of a jeweler appraising a questionable gemstone. "You must be the actress," Patricia said, not bothering to make it sound like a compliment. "My son Derek will meet you shortly. Remember, you're here to play a role, nothing more. Follow directions, smile when told, and you'll receive your payment. Is that clear?" Maya nodded, feeling more like a hired prop than a professional actress. She was led through halls lined with portraits of Morrison ancestors, all of them looking as cold and judgmental as Patricia herself. Derek Morrison appeared an hour later. He was handsome in that carefully cultivated way of men born into wealth. Good haircut, better suit, and a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He shook Maya's hand with the enthusiasm of someone fulfilling an obligation. "Thank you for doing this," he said, and for a moment Maya caught something genuine in his voice. Sadness, perhaps, or resignation. But before she could analyze it, his mother interrupted, ushering them both toward a sitting room where contracts awaited. Maya should have read every word. She should have asked questions. She should have listened to the small voice in her head whispering that something felt wrong. But the number on the payment line kept drawing her eyes, and she signed her name with hands that trembled from hope rather than fear. As she handed back the papers, Maya noticed a figure standing in the doorway. An elegant black woman, perhaps in her 70s, watched the proceedings with an expression Maya couldn't read. She wore a deep purple dress that spoke of quiet confidence, and her silver hair was styled in a way that suggested she'd never felt the need to hide her age. When their eyes met, the woman offered a small, knowing smile that made Maya's stomach flip. "Who is that?" Maya whispered to a passing staff member. "That's Eloise Winters," the woman replied, her voice dropping as if speaking a secret. "She's been close to the family for years. Best not to bother her." But Eloise Winters didn't look bothered. She looked like someone watching a play unfold exactly as she'd written it, waiting patiently for the third act revelation. Maya woke on Saturday morning to find a wedding dress hanging in her room. Not a costume, not a rental. A custom-designed gown that fit her perfectly, its silk and lace whispering against her skin like promises she didn't understand. When the hair and makeup team arrived, they treated her with the reverence reserved for actual brides, not actresses playing make-believe. "This is quite elaborate for a family video," Maya said to the makeup artist, trying to keep her voice light despite the anxiety building in her chest. The woman simply smiled and continued painting Maya's lips a perfect shade of rose. By noon, the estate had transformed into a wedding venue that belonged in magazines. Hundreds of guests began arriving, all of them dressed in their finest, all of them treating this event with genuine solemnity. Maya found Derek in the chaos and pulled him aside. "This is just for the video, right?" she asked, hating how her voice shook. "These people, they know this isn't real?" Derek's jaw tightened. He glanced toward where his mother stood, orchestrating the event like a general commanding troops. "Just play your part, Maya. You'll get paid. That's what matters, isn't it?" His words felt like a slap, but before Maya could respond, she was swept away by the wedding coordinator. The ceremony was beginning. She had no more time for questions. Maya walked down an aisle lined with roses, her arm linked with a hired stand-in for the father she'd never mentioned. The guests stood. An orchestra played. Derek waited at an altar that looked distressingly official, and presiding over it all was an officiant whose credentials Maya had never thought to verify. The ceremony proceeded with all the gravity of reality. The officiant spoke of legal bonds and lifelong commitments. Rings were produced. Real gold. Real diamonds. Vows were exchanged that sounded nothing like movie dialogue. And when the officiant said, "Do you, Maya Chen, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" The word lawfully seemed to echo in her ears. Maya's hands shook as panic finally caught up with her denial. This felt wrong. This felt real. But Patricia Morrison's eyes were on her. Hard and expectant, Derek's hand held hers with a grip that felt like a trap. And 200 witnesses watched with champagne smiles, waiting for her to complete her performance. "I do," Maya whispered, and told herself she could fix this later. She told herself this was all still pretend. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the officiant declared, and just like that, Maya's world shifted beneath her feet. The reception blurred past in a haze of congratulations from strangers and champagne she couldn't taste. Maya moved through it like a ghost, smiling when expected, laughing when prompted, all while her mind raced through everything that had just happened, the legal language, the official documents she'd seen Derek sign, the way his mother had relaxed the moment the ceremony concluded, as if a great burden had been lifted. This hadn't been a performance. This had been a transaction, and Maya had been the commodity sold. She was planning her escape, mentally cataloging the fastest route to the exit, when a gentle hand touched her arm. Maya turned to find Eloise Winters standing beside her, that same knowing smile playing at her lips. "Walk with me, dear," Eloise said softly. It wasn't a request. They moved to a quiet corner of the garden, away from the celebration. Eloise took both of Maya's trembling hands in her own steady ones and leaned close when she spoke. Her voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. "Nothing will be cancelled." Maya's blood ran cold. "What do you mean? This was just... It was supposed to be fake. I was hired to act... Child," Eloise interrupted, her tone gentle but firm. "That was a legal marriage. Every document was real. Every witness was legitimate. You are now Mrs. Maya Morrison, legally bound in the state of New York and recognized in all 50 states. Nothing about what just happened was pretend." The garden spun, Maya's knees buckled, and Eloise guided her to a bench before she could fall. The older woman sat beside her, holding her steady while Maya's entire reality crumbled and reformed into something unrecognizable. "Why?" Maya finally managed. "Why would they do this?" Eloise's expression hardened with something that looked like long-simmering anger. "Because desperation makes us vulnerable, and the Morrison family has always been skilled at exploiting vulnerability." Eloise led Maya to a private study in a guest house far from the celebration. There, with the door locked and the curtains drawn, she revealed the truth that the Morrison family had buried beneath champagne and roses. "My name is Eloise Winters," she began, "and I'm not just a family friend. I'm Derek's grandmother, his mother's mother, and the founder of Winters Technology Solutions. Perhaps you've heard of it?" Maya had. Everyone had. Winters Technology was one of the most successful Black-owned tech companies in the country, worth billions, and this elegant woman sitting beside her, offering tea like they were discussing the weather, had built it from nothing. "The Morrison family," Eloise continued, her voice taking on a sharp edge, "has been drowning in debt for years. Bad investments, worse spending habits, and absolutely no business sense. They've been living on borrowed time and borrowed money, maintaining appearances while everything crumbled behind the facade. They were weeks away from losing everything, the house, the cars, the lifestyle they've always believed was their birthright." "What does that have to do with me?" Maya asked, though she was beginning to understand. "Derek has a trust fund," Eloise explained. $500 million that I established years ago, with strict conditions. He could only access it if he was married before his 30th birthday. That birthday is tomorrow." The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Maya wasn't hired to play a bride. She was hired to be one. The Morrison family had orchestrated an elaborate trap, using her desperation as the bait and her dreams as the hook. "They needed someone who wouldn't ask too many questions," Maya said numbly. "Someone who needed money badly enough to sign without reading carefully, someone disposable." "Yes," Eloise confirmed, "and I'm sorry to say you were perfect for their purposes." Maya stood abruptly, anger finally burning through her shock. "Then I'll get it annulled. I'll go to the police. I'll—" "Read your contract," Eloise interrupted, producing a copy from her bag. "Page 7, paragraph 3. Maya read and felt the trap snap shut completely. She'd agreed to a binding prenuptial arrangement. If she sought divorce or annulment within 1 year, she would receive nothing and would be liable for all legal costs. If she stayed for 1 year, she would receive $50,000 monthly. If she violated the non-disclosure agreement by speaking publicly about the arrangement, she would be sued for $5 million. "They've made me a prisoner," Maya whispered. "They've done far worse to others," Eloise replied, and her voice carried decades of pain. "My daughter, Derek's mother, was also trapped by the Morrison family. She was a brilliant young lawyer when she met Derek's father. They promised her the world, then slowly took everything that made her herself. She died 5 years ago, and I couldn't save her. But I can save you." Maya looked up, finding something fierce burning in Eloise's eyes. "Why did you say nothing would be cancelled?" Maya asked. "If you knew what they were planning, why didn't you stop it?" Eloise smiled, and it was the smile of a chess player moving her queen into position for checkmate. "Because I've been waiting for this moment for 5 years. I've been documenting their crimes, gathering evidence, building a case, and I needed them to make one more mistake, one more act of cruelty so blatant that no lawyer could explain it away. You, my dear, are that mistake. And now, I'm going to destroy them." She pulled out a laptop and showed Maya everything. Years of financial records proving embezzlement, proof of tax fraud, evidence of coercion in previous business deals, documentation of bribes paid to officials, and recordings, so many recordings, of the Morrison family discussing their various illegal activities, never suspecting that the woman they considered a harmless family friend was actually documenting their downfall. I control 40% of Morrison Industries through shell companies, Eloise revealed. They never knew. The trust fund Derek is so desperate to access, it's my money, filtered through legal structures they couldn't trace. I've been funding their lifestyle while waiting for them to hang themselves with their own greed, and tonight, they finally did. Maya stared at this woman who had seemed so quiet, so unassuming, and realized she was looking at someone more powerful than she'd ever imagined. What happens now? Now, Eloise said, I give you a choice. You can take a settlement, say $2 million, and walk away. Start fresh somewhere else. Try to forget this nightmare. Or you can stay, help me finish this, and watch as the people who tried to use you learn that some people fight back. Maya thought of every audition she'd ever attended where someone had dismissed her as not quite right. Every casting director who'd looked through her like she was invisible. Every time someone had treated her as less than, as disposable, as something to be used and forgotten. She thought of Derek's mother, a brilliant woman reduced to a trophy and a cautionary tale. I want to fight, Maya said. Eloise's smile was proud. Then let's show them what happens when they underestimate the wrong women. The next morning, the Morrison family gathered for a celebratory breakfast on the terrace. They were relaxed now, their grand scheme complete. Derek had accessed his trust fund at midnight. The money had been transferred. Their debts would be paid. Everything was perfect. Maya descended the stairs with Eloise beside her. Patricia Morrison's smile was smug as she gestured to a seat beside Derek. Good morning, dear daughter-in-law. I trust you slept well? Actually, Eloise said, her voice cutting through the morning air like a blade, I don't think anyone will be sleeping well for quite some time. She placed a folder on the table, then another, financial records, legal documents, transcripts of recorded conversations, and finally, a letter signed by the FBI confirming an ongoing investigation into Morrison Industries. What is this? Patricia demanded, her face paling. This is the evidence I've been compiling for 5 years, Eloise replied calmly, pouring herself coffee as if discussing the weather. Evidence of embezzlement, tax fraud, wire fraud, coercion, and conspiracy. Everything your family has done, documented in exquisite detail. The FBI has had it for 3 months. They've been building their case. I'd estimate you have about 72 hours before arrests begin. Derek's father stood so quickly his chair fell backward. You can't. We'll fight this. You can't fight mathematics, Eloise interrupted. You also can't fight the fact that I control 40% of Morrison Industries. I've controlled it for 7 years, using shell companies and trusts you were too arrogant to notice the company you thought you owned. I've owned the majority share for quite some time. I've been funding your lifestyle, paying your debts, and watching you dig yourselves deeper. Patricia's hands shook. Why? Why would you do this? Because you killed my daughter, Eloise said, and for the first time her voice carried raw emotion. Not with a weapon, not with violence, but you trapped her, diminished her, broke her spirit piece by piece until there was nothing left. And I watched her fade, and I couldn't save her, but I swore I would make sure you never did it to anyone else. She turned to Maya. They tried to do to you what they did to my daughter. They thought you were powerless, desperate, easy to manipulate. They were wrong. Eloise laid out her terms with the precision of someone who had planned this moment for years. The Morrison family would release Maya from all contracts with a $2 million settlement. Derek would grant Maya an immediate no-fault divorce. The family would step down from all positions in Morrison Industries, and they would cooperate fully with the FBI investigation. If you refuse, Eloise concluded, I will ensure every piece of evidence reaches not just law enforcement, but every major media outlet in the country. Your crimes will be headline news. Your name will be synonymous with fraud and cruelty. You'll lose everything, including your freedom. Patricia Morrison, who had spent her entire life believing herself untouchable, finally broke. We accept. Papers were signed, lawyers were called. and by sunset, Maya Chen was no longer Maya Morrison. She was free, with $2 million and a story she would carry forever. Derek approached her as she prepared to leave. He looked smaller somehow, diminished by the collapse of the empire he'd never questioned. "I'm sorry," he said. "For what it's worth, I really am sorry. They pushed me into this, said it was the only way. I should have been stronger." Maya studied him, this man who had been both her captor and fellow prisoner. "You should have been honest," she said, "but I hope you learn to be your own person now. Good luck, Derek." She walked away, without looking back. 6 months later, Maya stood in her new office, overlooking Manhattan from a building she'd never dreamed of entering. Chen Productions occupied an entire floor, and the walls displayed posters for documentaries and series she'd created, all telling stories of women who had been underestimated, exploited, and had fought back. Her phone rang. Derek's name appeared on the screen. She'd been ignoring his calls for months, but today she answered. "I wanted you to know," he said, "I've been in therapy. Real therapy, working through everything, and I've cut ties with my family. It's scary as hell, but I think I'm actually figuring out who I am without their money and expectations." "I'm glad," Maya said, and meant it. "Would you ever want to get coffee?" he asked. "Not as anything romantic? Just as two people who survived the same terrible thing?" Maya considered the Derek she'd married had been a puppet. Maybe the Derek who had cut his own strings was someone worth knowing. "Maybe," she said. "Call me in a few months." A knock on her door interrupted. Eloise entered, elegant as always, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Busy day?" the older woman asked. "Always," Maya replied, smiling. Over the past months, Eloise had become what family should be, supportive without being controlling, proud without being possessive. They had lunch every Tuesday. They called each other for advice and comfort. They had chosen each other in a way that biology never required. "I'm proud of you," Eloise said. "What you're building here, these stories you're telling, they matter." "I learned from the best," Maya replied. "You taught me that power isn't about money or status. It's about patience, strategy, and never letting anyone make you smaller than you are." Eloise raised her coffee cup in a toast. "To women who refuse to be underestimated." "And to women who fight back," Maya added. That evening, Maya received an email from a young woman named Sarah. She'd seen one of Maya's documentaries and had a story to share. A story about being exploited by her employers, trapped in a contract she didn't understand, afraid to fight back because she had no resources. Maya read the email twice, then picked up her phone. When Sarah answered, Maya could hear the fear and desperation in her voice, the same emotions Maya had carried 6 months ago. "Don't worry," Maya said, her voice steady and certain. "Nothing will be canceled. Not your dreams, not your dignity, not your future. And you're not alone in this fight anymore." As she began planning how to help Sarah, Maya looked at her reflection in the office window. The woman staring back was no longer the desperate actress who had signed away her freedom for money. She was someone stronger, someone who had walked through fire and emerged as steel. The Morrison family had tried to use her. They had thought her powerless. They had been catastrophically wrong. And now, Maya was ensuring that no one else would be used the same way, because sometimes the people who seem the most powerless are simply gathering their strength. Sometimes, the quiet woman in the corner is the most dangerous person in the room, and sometimes, what looks like an ending is actually just the beginning of someone rising to claim the power that was always theirs. What an incredible journey from deception to empowerment. If this story moved you, smash that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear that they're never truly powerless. Subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss our stories of karma, justice, and redemption. Drop a comment. What would you have done in Maya's position? Would you have fought back or walked away? And remember, never underestimate the quiet ones in the corner. They might just be your salvation. See you in the next story, where karma always finds its target.